Good morning, afternoon, evening, my science lovers. It's time for some Saturday science. Today we're going to discuss generic versus name brand drugs. What are the differences? How they get approved? How they go to market? You guys voted for this topic, so we're going to get it started here. Your approximate wait time is 30 minutes. Your time is important to us. Thank you for sharing your Saturday with me. I got some new patrons I'm going to shout out to in a little bit. But first, got my patron video for you. For all my super awesome patrons out there supporting my work and continuously helping me do what I do, I have a few new patrons I'm going to shout out here today. So, here we go with this video. Howdy, howdy, howdy. My stuff is working, guys. Isn't it a Saturday science miracle? Or is it just a technological thing that I managed to work out? You go. Hey. So, how's it going, guys? Hello, Doc Fearsome. Hey, Bo. Hello, Max Bikini Headroom. You just joined. Wayne Terry from Canterbury, England. How you guys doing? I have put together a show for you on generic versus name brand drugs, and this is what people vote for and what they ask for, and they're like, please, please, please discuss this thing. I need to understand more. So there we go. We got the chat going on right there. Hey guys, hey guys. So I've been working with the chat. I might have to find some other really cool peeps out there. I'm very, very bright right now. I think. I don't know. I've got my overhead light on, and usually it's not so washed out. But I guess we'll just roll with it today. How you doing? Catching up with every spooky bed hair. What's up? Hashtag heathen. How you doing? Also, I think we had... I'm scrolling back. Brian Stevens. What's up? Hello, Bobby and his blanket. How are you today? You know, I used to have, I think, a very special sweater that I felt was kind of like a blanket in a way, because it was really oversized and it felt like I was wearing just this huge blanket. And I wore it around the house, and then one day it went missing. I still haven't gotten over that, man. That was a very special sweater blanket. It was a sweater, but it felt like a body blanket. It was amazing. 'em. 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 My lighting is 90 to 95% ideal. Awesome. Then I'll do the overhead and the 2 LEDs that I have bouncing up. These are all LED lights, by the way, because, you know, I have 2 LED lights right here, and then I have an overhead. So I have it coming down and it's bouncing up this way. So hopefully that works out. So how about we go ahead and start talking drugs, guys? Drugs are not all bad. We kind of need them sometimes. So we kind of need drugs. So what am I going to talk about today? This is what we're talking about, boys and girls, men and women, ladies and gents. We're talking about drugs. We're talking about generic versus name brand. So we're going to discuss what are they. We're going to compare and contrast the two. You know, fully, we're going to dig right down. We're going to say, how does it all work? How do they get to market? What are the things that you have to do? We're also going to talk about cost. So I've pulled some cost stuff from 2015 from Blue Cross Blue Shield. We're going to kind of compare the costs, and it's pretty striking. And maybe we'll have a little conversation about, you know, what are we going to do about getting these types of medications to people who need them, because that's a real thing that's going on in the U.S. right now. People not being able to afford their medications. So let's talk a little bit. Let's break this down. Generic versus name brand. What are we looking at? There are some active ingredients. They have the same active ingredients between the two, have the same efficacy. They usually produce the same desired outcome. They have the same efficacy, so they have the same entry, whether it's oral or IV. So between the two, so if you are purchasing a generic medication versus a name brand medication, you're essentially going through and you're using them the same way, whether it's through an IV, whether you take it orally, where it's administered through the eyeballs, or if it's a suppository. They all have to have the same mode of entry. They also have the same mode of molecular interaction. So they essentially have the same effect on your body as the name brand. They can vary in inactive ingredients. So some medications you might have some sucrose thrown in there, but there's some sugar, there might be some cornstarch, different things that are inactive and don't actually do anything to the drug. They also can vary in packaging. It can vary greatly in cost. Now, the thing that's different is the drug development and research. That is the main difference between the two, as well as FDA approval. So, what are we talking about when we're breaking all this down and discussing the ins and outs? So, boom. How are you guys? So, my chat, it's always nice to have you here with me. So it's you guys checking out my background. So I've thought about putting a green screen back here, but people are like, no, I like your background. I like your background. So I might start doing a bit more green screen stuff in a different way with another series. So, oh goodness. So thank you guys for being here. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between the two. All right, so the first thing we have to do, if we're going to start talking about the difference between generic and name brand drugs, is how each type of drug comes to market. Now, the FDA is a great resource in discussing the differences between the two and how drugs actually go through and what it is that they have to do, the history, what, essentially what they have to establish in order to get sent to your local pharmacy. You're always glad to be here. Yay. I'm still getting the sleep out of my eyes, and I'm drinking my coffee, And this is when I went to the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, which was amazing. I really, really like that. Yeah, so efficacy tends to be the same. There are some things we're going to discuss a little bit, Brian, because some people can have different outcomes with the differences. So they're still kind of looking into that. So we're gonna discuss a bit in that. So Einstein is liking R2D2. Is he? Yes, he is. That actually, that particular R2D2 right back there, it's remote controlled via Bluetooth app. So I can actually get him to move around, but I don't want to do that. I kind of like R2D2 there, so kind of keep it there. Just for me. Because I'm missing my pancreas and break down things differently, there's one med that I can't break the liner down on to have to, therefore the name brand, but that's the only one. Okay, so, I mean, that's one thing. And, you know, people are going to be a bit different, and your needs are going to be a bit different. And how we react can be different as well, and that's okay. All right, so let's talk about what it is that brings a name brand drug to market. All right, so let's see. There you guys are. Got my chat right there. All right, so we have the various different things. Whenever a drug is, you know, if we have a new allergy medication, new blood pressure medication, or something to treat acne, or a pain med, or anything with that, it has to go through what's called discovery and development. So you essentially have to go through and find different compounds and kind of figure out how they interact with other enzymes in the body. So you're talking about the bare bones basics. Okay, we know that this particular compound affects this particular receptor on this cell. I worked, part of my research when I was in graduate school was computational chemistry. That's what we worked on, was trying to find different compounds and how they would interact with a certain receptor through Mo software. Mo software is essentially a software package where you can sit there and put a protein like receptor and then test to see how different compounds interact with that receptor, the kinds of bonds that they make. Would that be like a permanent form of bonding, or is it like a hydrogen bonding? Do we think that that would cause it to shut off that receptor or turn on that receptor? So discovery and development can take a long time trying to find it. Then you undergo what's called preclinical research. Preclinical research essentially is testing this particular compound on animals to kind of get an idea of toxicity, what it does, how it affects an animal. You know, you can use mice are a perfect example of this, because if you're trying to test and see if this drug has an effect on a particular enzyme, you can genetically make mice that don't have that enzyme and mice that have that enzyme and see what the effects are, and what the outcome is. And so that's one way that you can use preclinical research to test and see how a particular medication affects a living organism with the presence of that enzyme and without that enzyme there. That's one example. MOE, Mo from The Simpsons. No, I believe it's molecular, I think it's molecular orbital environment. I don't remember what the O means because it just always called it Mo. And so that's just how we actively discussed it with me and my PI, my mentor. Then after the FDA goes through, you know, and then what you can do is you can apply for clinical research where you can start testing on humans. So the FDA goes through and they look and go, okay, we feel that this is safe for you to start your clinical research. When you're going through preclinical research, you also have to declare and let them know and let them look to see what animals you tested on. You have to keep up with all that. So this isn't some fly-by-night thing. It requires a lot of proof in a thing called evidence. Scientists are elbows deep in. And so they have to show definitively that a particular medication isn't toxic. And before they get started on testing on humans, they have to go through and get that checked out as well. Then after the clinical research, after they get approved to test it on people, They then can go and say, okay, double-blind studies, all these different types of things they'll try to see. Hey, Nether, you're late. You know, that's okay. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start making events in advance for my Saturday shows, because I know I don't know the topic usually until the week of. So I think what I might do is go ahead and make a whole bunch of Science of shows and just like events to where you can click to set a reminder, and then the topics will change with each one of those, but you can at least have a reminder. So I'm going to work on that so people won't be late. So that's okay. So that way you'll have a reminder and your phone will go off or whatever you're watching. So I'm getting better with that. It's hard because it's just me, but I'm getting better with that. And so I appreciate your patience as I grow. So, all right. So we've talked about discovery and development. That can take a while. Finding a compound that even does a thing. Then testing it on animals to make certain it doesn't kill anything. Then we go to people, okay, to make certain actually that does it do the thing we think it is, and if not, you know, do we need to go back and say, okay, now it does this other thing that's really awesome, but it doesn't do the thing we want, but that's okay. That's okay. So we're gonna take it and then we're gonna test it on people, and so once that gets approved to test on people, right? Then if it's all hunky-dory, everything works out. Hello, everyone. Everything works out. Then it goes under FDA review. Then they go through and they look at everything and they double check. Did you do this particular thing? They may require more evidence. It's almost like a type of peer review to an extent. They go through and they make sure and are certain that what you say it does, it does. There are people that this is their whole job, is to sit there and ask questions and demand more evidence to show that what it does is. Then, even after it goes out to market, FDA will monitor its safety and say, all right, now that it's in a larger population, do we see any side effects that are problematic? Is it killing anybody? Is it causing any type of permanent injury? That's what the FDA does. And so that's kind of what we go through when we're dealing with a drug like this. All right, so I'm going to have you take a look at how much time this takes. So take a look at this. Look at that. So this comes to us from Pharmaceutical Research in Manufacturers of America, this particular infographic. So it could take 3 to 6 years just trying to sort out a compound. So what I was doing over here, I was in this portion in grad school for a little bit with computational chemistry. So we would be looking at a whole bunch of compounds and trying to see which ones. Now, the thing about computational chemistry, which is amazing, this will narrow this down a whole lot sooner to get you closer to this number. So this is where you would start the wet lab, what they call the wet lab. So this computational chemistry is knocking this out a lot sooner, but it can still take some time. So computational chemistry is knocking this out a lot sooner, just trying to find what particular compounds would interact with the receptor. Whether that's going to be a lab-generated one or a completely synthetic new compound, or one that they're trying to find out like in the rainforest where we have a lot of diversity of plants that have compounds. That would be great. Now we got this preclinical section. So now we've narrowed it down to about 250 compounds that we think fire off a particular set of receptors on a cell that give us a desired effect of, like, let's say, like histamine blockers, you know, kind of keep that from firing off. So they block that histamine. That would be what we see when we're dealing with allergies. So now we can test it on animals. And then we're like, okay, now we've knocked it down. There's 5 compounds now. 5 compounds now that do what we want it to do. So we start phase 1. So we start with just a small set of people. Which compound works best? Well, maybe 3 of them. So then we move to phase 2. Now we have around 100 to 300 people. We might have gotten down to about 2 compounds at this point. Maybe 3 of these didn't do the same in people as they did in a mouse. So then now we're down to phase 2. We got about maybe 2 or 3 compounds that are working. Then finally we get down to phase 3. Maybe one of these compounds had horrible, horrible side effects, and we're like, yeah, we don't like that. So now we got to go down to phase 3. We're like, all right. So this time we're going to use 1,000 to 3,000 volunteers for this new drug trial, and we're going to test it on a much larger population. And then we'll say, okay, these two, we have 2 drugs left. We had 3 here. 1 didn't do so great because of side effects. So we got 2 here. Now we got to see which 2 are better. And then we go through and like, okay, drug 2 has people have a stronger response, desired response from drug 2 as opposed to drug 1. So now we're like, here's all of our data. Here's all of our data. And then FDA will go through and say, okay, we're reviewing. And now we're checking the large-scale manufacturing. And now the FDA will go through and watch and make certain you do everything that you're supposed to do. And make certain it's doing everything it's supposed to do. So that's a pretty hefty thing. And it can take anywhere from 10 to 15 years to get a particular drug out there, out and about amongst the population. Let's see. So I'm checking up on the chat. All right. So I think I've caught up a little bit on that. So that's essentially what we're looking at when we're dealing with a drug development situation. And it can, like I said, it can be 10 to 15 years easily for this particular thing. So when we're talking about this, it can cost, so when you're dealing with 10 to 15 years, it can cost as much as $802 million over a period of this time to get a drug to market. There was a study that was published in 2000, and I posted a link. The Scientific American has kind of got the take on this from a few different people in the field, different PhDs in the field who work in drug development, get their take on this, and I have a link for that. They kind of break it down. You can pretty easily Google it. And they discuss a study that was done in 2000 where they found that it takes an average of 10 to 15 years to get a drug. About $802 million is what it costs. So when we're looking at this, why are name brand drugs so expensive? Well, that's why. $802 million is a lot of money. So once the drug is approved, so once it gets through all of that process through the FDA and it's approved, a patent is given to the company to allow it to recoup costs as well as make a profit. Now, a patent lasts for 20 years. That's pretty standard. Now, there are patents and there's something called exclusivity. Now, the FDA website is, again, a great resource for this, and they state the difference. So it's important to understand the difference between patents and exclusivity. Now, patents and exclusivity work, and this is from the FDA, they work in similar fashion but are distinct from one another and governed by different statutes. Patents are a property right that's granted by the United States Patent and Trademark Office any time during the development of a drug, and it can encompass a wide range of claims. Exclusivity refers to certain delays and prohibitions and approval of competitor drugs available under the statute that attach upon the approval of a drug or of certain supplements. Now, a new drug application known as an NDA or abbreviated new drug application, ANDA holder is eligible for exclusivity if statutory requirements are met. They have a whole lot of code that you can look up to see. They say C21 CFR 314.108, 316.31, 316.34, and sections 505A, 505E, and 505I, 5BIV of the FD&C Act. Felt like a Vogon just now, and if you get that reference, then you get extra points. Now, periods of exclusivity in patent items may or may not run concurrently. Exclusivity was designed to promote a balance between new drug innovation and greater public access to drugs that result from generic drug competition. So let me catch a bit up on the chat. So that comes to us from the FDA. Straight out the horse's mouth, as they say. So let's see. Exception is when treated with hydrophobic. I'm missing the context on that. Complex. Oh, we're talking about coffee. Okay. CI American used to be very reliable and stay away from clickbaity stuff, but not so much anymore, though still better than Quanta. And many companies won't even invest in bringing a drug to market if they can't get patents or exclusivity. That's true. That's true. Both have to a long period for today's changing world. And this is the major reason why Ritalin patches will most likely never come to the Danish market. The cost related to approval for sale is way too high for our tiny country. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That stinks. But, you know, it's freaking expensive. So let's talk about the different types of exclusivity. So you have something that's called orphan drug exclusivity. That's about 7 years. Then you have new chemical entity exclusivity. That's about 5 years. There's generating antibiotic incentives now, called GAIN exclusivity. That's 5 years added to certain other exclusivities. There's something called new clinical investigation exclusivity. That's about 3 years. There's pediatric exclusivity, 6 months added to existing patents exclusivity. There's patent challenge, which is 180 days, but that's exclusive. That exclusivity is for ANDAs only. That's abbreviated drugs that I mentioned before. And then there's also competitive generic therapy. So that's 180 days. This exclusivity is also for ANDAs only. So let's take a look at, let's see, Vogons are very officious, often wanting stuff in triplicate. Spooky Bad Hair gets points for that. You get points for that. It was actually about impromptu rules. Ah, okay. If I remember the Schengen Treaty right, there would be no way to have a drug only be available in parts of the EU. I'm not certain about that particular treaty. I'm not really entirely certain about it. So I've got exclusivity and generic drugs. So I'm going to pop this over and we're going to have a look at this particular infographic because I found it quite useful. So I'm going to have you have a look at this with me on my big monitor over here. Exclusivity and generic drugs. What does it mean? So this is pretty important. So when we're going through and we're discussing exclusivity, especially for generic drugs, and here's the different things that I was just kind of going through. It's a period of time when name brand drug is protected from generic drug competition. Now there are different exclusivities for different situations. And it's, again, I mentioned this before, it's to promote balance between new drug innovation to allow companies to recoup their costs, but at the same time, allow generic drug competition to come in, especially when it comes to trying to get medications out to the public who can't afford name brand. So most of the time we have a 5-year exclusivity. So when a drug is developed, it takes about 5 years. They allow them 5 years to have the name brand only, and then generics can kind of pop in. So what is orphan drug exclusivity? Now that's for a disease or condition that affects fewer than 200,000 people in the U.S. So if it's like a rare disease and that sort of thing, and if it affects a lot of people, but the company will still have no hope of recovering the development costs, they tend to have a longer period of time of exclusivity for name brand drugs. Now, if there's a particular drug where there's an active ingredient that's been approved before, but you're developing a new way to deliver it instead of like oral, maybe it's IV or a tablet rather than a liquid, you get 3 years exclusivity. Then we're hopping around to pediatric and antibiotic. Certain antibiotic drugs, they can get 5-year exclusivity. and certain pediatric drugs can get 6-month exclusivity. But that's added on to any other exclusivities associated with the drug. Now, after exclusivities are over, you cannot block generic approval, and generics can also join the market. Now, here's where we get into the standards. The generic drug applicant shown that the product has met all FDA standards for approval. I'm going to go through those in a second. It's no longer, the patent protection no longer blocks generic approval. And the first generic drug can get exclusivity for 180 days. For the first one to come out with a generic, they get 180 days of exclusivity in this case. So that's all pretty interesting. That I really like kind of some of the infographics that the FDA has, because it just kind of breaks it down pretty easily. So rather than trying to copy and paste that here, I'm just like, here's the website. It's so much easier. Oh, goodness. So it's just kind of one of those things. Like, it takes, what was it, $802 million just to make a drug. So, because research is expensive and it takes a long time. So, how are we going to find that balance of getting the medications out to the people and still be able to pay for all of this research? You'll have points. Yay. Douglas Adams, triple nerd points. That's right. We totally need an internationally recognized approval system to bring the cost down, thereby reducing the end user's price. Why haven't we done this? I don't know. I'm not in charge. If I was, things would be a different thing. Big money is to be made. Goodness. If they got rid of, one of the things that was still kind of fairly recent is allowing drug companies to advertise. They remove the advertisement and the kickbacks. That might actually take down some of that cost. And so maybe, especially with the birth of streaming without commercials, that might actually take it back, take back some of that cost. So that might be a potential way to get rid of that. So let's talk about the FDA standards when it comes to marketing, or actually not marketing, but when it comes to FDA approval and the standards that have to be met in order for a generic drug to make it to market. They have to be pharmaceutically equal. Equal across, all across the board. Has to be the same compound, same structure. Not just compound. You can put a compound together in different ways. Has to be exactly the same compound. Same shape of molecule, all of that. They have to be able to correctly manufacture the particular drug. And then the same way as the name brand. They have to be consistent in their manufacturing processes. They can't change how they manufacture. They have to do it the same way, be able to do it on a large scale the same way each time. They also have to have the same active ingredients, same amount of the active ingredients. The inactive ingredients have to be safe, but they don't have to be the same inactive ingredients. That's where a difference is. They don't have to have the same inactive ingredients as the name brand. The drug cannot break down over time in any different way than the other one. It also has to have appropriate packaging to be able to hold the medication and for safe transport. Has to have the same label as the drug as far as all the side effects, and it also has to have relevant patents and exclusivities have to be expired before they can come to market. So, wrong one. Yes, if it doesn't, it's too unstable to interact with our body. Right. So it has to break down in the same manner, in the same time frame, essentially. Yep. So I'm checking up on the chat to see if we have any questions. So when we're talking about all this, so now we know a little bit of what the drug companies, generic drug companies the hurdles they have to overcome. Now, some people might say, well, what if the generic medication acts differently in me than the name brand? Well, some studies in past research have shown that there can be approximately 4% difference between brand name drugs and generic drugs. Now, this is according to Dr. Chowdhury at Harvard University. Now, Dr. Chowdhury touts that the FDA allows as much as 20% variance, but only about 4% is seen in the market. So we only see about 4% difference as opposed to the 20% that the FDA allows. Now, it's important to note that the FDA does not require human testing for generic drugs. They require proof that it is the same drug, not the same They require proof that it's the same drug, same packaging, same compounds. The inactive ingredients can be the same or different, the inactive ones, but that doesn't. They don't make them test to make certain that the effects are the same. However, given that the compound in itself has already undergone extensive testing, the added testing for generic medications is not considered necessary, as any added health risk would not be likely, if at all. Now, the idea is to get life-saving medications on the market at a lower cost for those who cannot afford name brands, but still allowing the name brands recouping the extensive cost of research. So, nearly 8 out of 10 prescriptions in the U.S. that are filled are generic. Generic tends to be about 80 to 85% less than name brands. Now let's take a look at a graphic from Blue Cross Blue Shield on the cost of generic versus name brand drugs. Let me catch up on the chat before we look at that particular graphic, actually. Ritalin, Novartis makes me sluggish, but Medicanet CR works much better for me. It is the opposite for my brother. But see, you're always going to have some variance, and that's the thing. The FDA allows that variance, but the end result is the same, but you can have a little bit of a difference, and that might be something, maybe the inactive ingredients are playing a role in that. So it's hard to have the exact same thing, even though the compound's the same. Maybe, it's a bit different. It can be a bit different. And there are some studies that are looking into, and some scientists are looking into the differences, but see, since generic can have so many different inactive ingredients, and it can vary on that, it's hard to know, but it is sparking some interesting questions about it. But still, generic overall can give you the same result. It just might be slightly different, and everybody is going to have be different anyway. So it's hard to know. So let me see. Let's see, difference. So we talked about that. What would be an acceptable profit to be made on medicines and still allow research? I'm not certain, because the development of certain medications can vary in cost. Just the discovery portion alone can take a long time. And so if you're paying people to kind of go through and work to discover a new medication, you're talking about a long period of time. It could be 6 years. So that's 6 years of hundreds and hundreds of people trying to find a particular medication to see if there's something that works on that. And you're going to have losses along that way as well. You're going to have compounds that are just not going to work. And so and that's not necessarily something to do with the scientist so much as it is you trying to find a thing. And sometimes that thing is a dead end. A lot of science is failure, but those failures can take you into new directions for research. So it's kind of one of those things. It's hard to know what an acceptable profit is, especially if you take some of that profit and apply it to future research. You don't know how much this next drug is going to cost to develop. That's a hard thing. So what we kind of possibly maybe need to do, and I'll get into this in just a second, is kind of move towards a national healthcare system where we all just kind of contribute what we can. You know what I mean? We already pay for health insurance if you have a job. If you don't have a job, and you're disabled, you do have access to like Medicare. We already pay for a national healthcare system to a degree. So why not, those who make a lot of money pay a bit more towards it. Those who don't make any money don't pay that, but they still have access to healthcare just like everybody else. So, it's just, we can funnel funds from that into research, and we can regulate it a bit better. We won't need to advertise for drugs and stuff like that because there won't be a need for that. And they can still make money and contribute to research and get a living, but it's just like, it's hard because the next drug might cost a lot of money to develop. So it's hard to say how you're going to do a profit. Yes, universal health care. Did I hear that Express Scripts is going to enable policy that no one pays more than $25 a month for insulin? Wow. Oh, God, over 25% of insulin users dilute it to make it last. That breaks my heart. And that's a life-saving and necessary medication. Yeah, so research is super important and expensive. So how in the world can we balance this out? We need to treat research and education a bit better, in my opinion. We need to invest in our people a bit more. In their quality of life. And, I think national healthcare system, universal healthcare, just going ahead and doing that. And if you have a job, quit. Let's not do these premiums for these independent insurance companies. Why not just take that money and put it towards this and fund the research? If you have a high-paying job, you should pay more for this sort of thing. I just, I kind of have a beef with these people that have paid their kids' way into college, bribed their way in, and I'll be in debt for the rest of my life for my student loan, and I worked for my degrees. So it's kind of like, if you're going to bribe people to get your kid into school, maybe we could have taken that money and helped way more people. So it's kind of like, it's hard. I have a bit of a beef with that. Let's see. It's the root of the expense problem, all of that. Your insulin is $1,200 a month without insurance. You wouldn't be able to afford it if you didn't have that insurance. Why? It's just terrible. Not the ingredients, it's the cook's way of baking the drug, so to speak. Yes, that a modern nation allows us. It is a type of exploitation. He was diluting and went into complications. That's terrible. Separating the production of existing and the research factors need to have a basal separation of the industries. Yeah, it is pretty bad. Dead people cannot pay taxes. Healthy folks can work, and this is good for everyone. Yeah, let's invest in our people. Let me show you a bit of what... Hey, Andy. Hey, Kristen. Let me show you a little bit of what this is. So I have this infographic from Blue Cross Blue Shield. This is what medication costs. So let me blow this up. Show you on my big monitor over here. So let's have a look. All right. So Abilify. Now, people are wondering, they're like, if you get cancer, you go bankrupt. All right, so look at this. Timidor, I think that's Timidor, 250 milligrams. A 30-day supply. So this is chemotherapy. The name brand cost is $28,530. All right. The generic is almost $5,000. Okay, so that's just right here. The generic is almost $5,000. So if you get cancer, you're gonna probably go. I mean, that could be a credit card for somebody right there, maxed out for just 30 days. For 30 freaking days. That's it. So I mean, that's the generic. Hopefully, if you have insurance, that's 90% of that's covered. But still, you're talking about an extremely, hopefully 80 to 90% of that's covered on the generic. But you're talking about an extremely expensive thing. So all of these. So this is, let's make certain our sources are fine. So this is Blue Cross Blue Shield members. So this is based on the average wholesale price from December 2015. So these numbers are from 2015. They might be different now. They might be higher. They might be lower. But this was reliable 4 years ago. So all of this, if this is an acne medication, the name brand is $2,241. The generic is almost $500. So you're looking at massive savings in the thousands, often in the thousands, for many of these medications. So it's pretty striking. Lexapro. Okay, Lexapro is an antidepressant. The name brand is $300. The generic is $3. The generic cost is $3 for an antidepressant. This is it's anti-anxiety. It is an antidepressant. So this is life-saving, $3. That's life-saving for somebody who suffers depression. For a 30-day supply. So the point being, generic is extremely important when it comes to life-saving situations for people. So interesting to see the cost here. Yes, so like I said, this came from Blue Cross Blue Shield. That is an insurance company. So hopefully they're being really transparent with these numbers, and these numbers are based on 2015 costs. So generic can be life-saving in many regards, but it can still be expensive depending on the illness that's associated with it. So it's kind of striking, but it's no less important. Yeah, Lexapro is antidepressant. Anti-anxieties are a bit different, and I do talk about that when I talk about antidepressants. And I have a whole episode just on that if you would like to know the difference. I'm not certain about the THC products. I think, I know ketamine is now coming out with a nasal synthetic version, which might be cool. Man, it only came at $550 instead. Yeah, okay. I'm trying to catch up on every day. Your supply of generic Celexa is $9 a month. That's awesome, Andy. That's good. It's a mix right now. Some are wanting to take it over, and others are fighting tooth and nail. There's actual lobbying on that going on. Yeah. If we got more depression medications to people, that would probably, and they could better contribute to society. Yes, invest in your people. I agree with you, Kristen. We should absolutely invest in our people. Not so much in the heavy corporations, but kind of give back to the community. Because if you don't have workers, who's going to do the work that you need done for your company to succeed? At some point in time, it feels very viral. It feels like a virus. A virus will take all of the resources, but eventually kill the host. And that's kind of what I feel like a lot of this is doing when we're looking at the current state of healthcare in the U.S. You know, what's the point of making medications if people don't have access to them? And, you know, if you kill off everybody, if everybody doesn't have access to it, where's your market? So it's kind of like how some viruses, they'll kill their host, and so the idea is to spread as much as possible. But if you kill out your hosts, how are they gonna survive? So it's strange. It's strange how this thinking goes a bit, in my opinion. Yeah. To be fair, I don't know if it's psychological or not, but generic doesn't always perform the same standards. I mentioned that a bit before, Orla. And their FDA allows about 20% wiggle room, but what we see in the market, there can be a 4% variance in how the end result is, as far as side effects and actual efficacy. So there can be a slight variance there, and there are scientists that are looking into that and see what these differences are. Might be just in the process of how the drug is made, even though it's made in the same type of way. There can still be variances in there that might have an effect downstream that they don't know about. So that is a thing that exists. So let me catch that. Who remembers Martin Shkreli? Oh, I do. He's actually in solitary confinement right now because he's guilty of contraband. He had a phone and was running stuff. Good comparison, Mel. Well, thank you. Yep. He raised a medication to ridiculously expensive, and he ended up going to jail for completely different reasons. For I think it was fraud. All right. So let me talk a little bit about this stuff. So essentially with generics, while there may be some differences between generic and name brand drugs, the differences don't really outweigh the benefit of choosing generic over name brand, especially given the cost, and the U.S. does not have a national health care system. Generic meds can still be expensive to the point of financially crippling, excuse me, especially in cases of cancer. It's time to take a look at the current system, as research is expensive yet necessary to limit human suffering. Perhaps we really do need an overhaul in healthcare to ensure people have access to medications that increase quality of life. It's not all just about us, man. What's the point of making medications if we don't give access to other people? Excuse me. Oh, I'm coughing my brains out. Freaking allergies. So, I'm going to show you some of my sources. If I don't cough my brains out in the process, I'll be like one of those weird banana gifs. You know, the banana coming out the nose. Somebody sent that to me on Twitter today. Maybe my brains will come out my nose like ancient Egyptians, but without the rod. So, have a look at my sources. And these are kind of hard to see. Scientific American, what's the difference between generic and name brand drugs? That's pretty good. Their take has several different scientists kind of discussing it. FDA, and I'll put these on my website, and you can go and check them out. FDA, drugs, resources for you consumers. If you just Google FDA generic drugs, you will get so many websites, links to website. All of this is just FDA. Health.harvard.edu. Do generic drugs compromise on quality? Excuse me. They actually talk about that. You also have the Blue Cross Blue Shield, Consumer Documents brand name versus generic drug costs. It's a PDF file. You can go and have a look for yourself. And again, health.harvard.edu, the cost of generic and name brand drugs. That's where I got my information they cite their sources as well. About 8 out of 10 prescriptions are generic, and it's 80 to 85% less than name brands. And so I kind of showed you some data on that as well. So, wrong thing. I could use some honey and lemon. I could probably use a hot toddy, man. I like a good hot toddy when I have like a sore throat. It's just awful when I'm just coughing all the time. But the name brand is recommended by most doctors. They get kickbacks. You guys know about the kickback system in the U.S., right? There are also medical doctors who are paid to go to other doctors to discuss certain name brand drugs. That's the thing also. I've had conversations with a few. They actually hire medical doctors to go talk to other doctors about their drugs. That's a whole separate thing. They talk about the side effects. They talk about how to use the drugs. They talk about what it does. So that's an actual job. So when they're not treating patients, they're going in and getting paid to talk to other doctors. So that's the thing that's real. Yeah, Martin Shkreli or whatever his name is just $300 a month for Seroquel. Man. Either I'm tiny or this mug is huge. I am not tiny per se. This holds about 2 cups of coffee. I'm kind of stacked, so I got curves. I'm not skinny, but I say I'm fat, but I'm not fat. I don't think, but the whole body dysmorphia thing is real. I used to be like super fit, but I've gained like 30 pounds. So I'm trying to lose it. I was eating my feelings and stress. So I won't say that I'm big, but I'm not little. I'm short. I'm about 5'6", 5'5". Even when I was fit, I was considered overweight, so it didn't matter. It's all whatever, So, yes. Hello, Winkle. So, Toddy and a teddy to keep you warm and snug in your bathrobe and slippers, sitting in front of a fireplace. It's hot outside. It is hot outside. Would you like to know what the current temperature is? Let me see. I'm pulling it up right now. If it will load. I don't know what it is. I think my bandwidth is kind of wonky right now because of the fact I am on the internet doing this live stream with my good friends. It really kind of is. I'm just right. I am 30 pounds heavier than when I did cosplay. And, I'm not ashamed to admit that. I eat my feelings sometimes. But I am moving towards making healthier decisions for myself that are conducive to my particular nutritional goals and needs. Okay, so it's 59 degrees Fahrenheit outside right now, so it's not hot. It's moderate. I wear like a size 10 in women's clothing right now. I might be on the 12 size, but I wear like around a 10. At my most fit, I was like a 7, 8. So I'm not like, I'm not a plus size lady. I'm less than the average. I probably weigh about, I don't know what the average weight is for my height. I'm less than the average size. I'm probably a 10, 12, but women's sizes are weird. This hoodie's a medium. The shirt underneath is a small, but I don't have, if I went by t-shirts, according to here, I would need an extra large, but that would be a big giant, everywhere else. So it's like, what do you do? I got some junk in the trunk. I do. So that's part of the, and I got a baby. So that's how it goes, you know. But my waist is 12 inches smaller than the rest of me. So it's like, and my chest and my hips are the same size. So, so yeah. So take that however you want, you know. I could wear a plus size thing. Most of my dresses are mediums. Sometimes they're larges. I used to wear a small, but I'm trying to get back to my fit self again. It's taking some time, you know. I've had a lot of anxiety. You know, if I want to lose 30 pounds, get a haircut. It's probably true. I'm just going to say I'm not fat. I'm just fluffy. I'm fluffy. That's what this is. But I can see it in my face, you know, so it's all right. Yeah, sizes do change. They're very different in other countries. I guess in the UK, I'd probably be a 16 or a 14 or something like that. I don't know. So, yeah. So, we went way off topic. We went way off topic. So, let's wrap this up. Oh my goodness. So what did we talk about? We talked about all of this when it comes to generic versus name brand drugs. What are they? We compared and contrasted them. Talked about how it all works to get them to market and the cost associated with it. And so we've talked about all of these different things. We talked about the breakdown. There's some same active ingredients, efficacy, entry, oral, IV. We've talked about the mode of molecular interaction, how it acts and breaks down in the body is the same. It's supposed to be. They can vary in inactive ingredients. So other fillers that are in there, those can change. Packaging and cost, but the main difference is the development of the drugs and the research that's involved. Those are the main freaking difference between the two. Wondering what part of that needed approval. I'm not certain what the question was there. Man. Goodness. So, where can you find me? Whoops. You can find me here. ScientistMel.com is my website. You know, I've been having some issues with my website with the hosting service. It was down for 7 hours yesterday. Jetpack's like, your website was down for 7 hours. I just had it migrated to a different server, so I'm going to have to hit them up again to fix that. Patreon. My patrons help me out. If all of my Twitter followers just gave me $1 a month, I could just do this all the time, and I would travel. And I would have shows and incorporate all of my viewers. I would engage with you directly. So if you can buy me a coffee once a month. They also get access to, I'm now getting all of the audio files associated with my shows and then putting it down into a downloadable format, and they get their own RSS feed for that. You can find me on Periscope, YouTube, Facebook. I have a Discord server, and you can find me on Twitch as well. So hello to my Twitch peeps out there. You can find me on all of these different things. So I've got to make a new promo video. Because I have some new patrons. So I will get a new promo video out for my new Patreon patron video out. So Mark Sykes is new. Thank you, Mark. Derp State is new. Thank you. And Rhetoric and Discourse. Thank you. I'm going to make a new patron video because I've been implementing that into my shows. Hello, Hemphill. Hello, everyone. If you are a new patron and I haven't got your name in yet to my video for my thank you video with my patrons, don't worry. I'm working on that, and I'm going to have a new one for next weekend. Also, Friday, Spirited Science returns, and I'm going to have Monty and Hannibal from the Shit Show are going to swing by, and we are going to talk about a scientist that they have chosen. They were like, we want to talk about this scientist, Valerie Thomas. Valerie Thomas used to work with NASA. And so we're going to talk about her life, her history, where she went to school, and all of her contributions. And I've made a cocktail called the Valerie Thomas. Investigated it, built it all together for me. It's sweet with a little bit of lightness, and it has a bit of a kick, a little hot kick to it. So that'll be the Valerie Thomas cocktail, and I'm going to get that trailer out soon. So you can check it out. Check it out on Friday, April 19th. Spirited Science returns. I think we're going to hit it up for 7 p.m. Central. But yes, so that's going to be freaking amazing. Let me catch up on the chat. Gosh. Hello, Hemp Hill. Okay, so for the non-science speaking people, please explain the difference between efficacy, and efficiency. Okay, efficacy is the same desired outcome. Okay, so efficacy on a drug means that it does what you expect it to do. Efficiency means you're doing something with less amount of work. You know, like something's more efficient. Or if you were to have a more efficient drug, it would be a lower dosage, but does the same thing. Has the same efficacy, the same desired outcome, but at a lower dosage. That's the difference. So you might have a more efficient drug that can do the same thing, but you don't have to take so much. That's efficient. But the same desired outcome is efficacy. Hope that's the difference there. There we go. All right. So, yes, Andy. I know you're not a patron anymore, and that's okay. He's building my computer for me. He's got all those really awesome looking computer pictures, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. Oh, I've been squeeing all through my house. That sounds like maybe I need a doctor for that. But there you go. So, my goals. So, I'm hoping to, this summer, I'm going to start working with an event planner. I'm going to try to see if I can't pull off a science communication convention. So, hopefully that'll get going. And so, I'm hoping to do more outreach over the summer. Maybe even travel a bit. So, let's get this going. If you can help me out, man. This is where I'm going to, like, you know, I'm doing my science altar call. Dig deep into your hearts, man. If you can help me reach these goals, I'm steadily growing. And I know if you want something done right, it takes a bit of time, but I'm gaining ground. And it's largely due to the fact that my patrons help me out. So I'm going to take a moment and show this awesome video thanking my patrons. We're gonna do that once I get this up because I'm clicking. Can you hear my mouse clicks? Yeah, so we're gonna, I'm gonna show this really awesome video of my patrons because they help me with everything and I can't thank them enough. All right, so that has been the science of generic versus name brand drugs. So, if you like, also, I'm bringing back my podcast. So, my patrons will get early access to the downloadable audio podcast, and they get their own RSS feed. So once I work out my website issues, I'll be bringing that back. The name of my podcast is #HeyScientistMel. So I'm taking all of my best episodes and converting it to audio files so you can listen to it driving to work, and it won't eat up all of your data. You know, wouldn't that be nice? And it is on iTunes. I think it's still on iTunes. So do check it out. You guys have been amazing. And I will see you next Thursday for This Week in BS. And then Friday, we're going to have Spirited Science. And then next Saturday, Ehlers-Danlos. I'm going to discuss that. And then we'll bring back the polls again for the next round of what you want me to discuss. So if you have ideas and topics for the show, hit me up on Twitter. Mention it in the comments. You can even go to my website and send me an email. Let me know and what your thoughts are. And thank you so much for being here for Saturday Morning Science. We don't have cartoons anymore, but we can still learn and grow, right? And I want to end it this way. You always make each day special for me. You know how? By just your being you. And yes, Andy, you can still get the Chaos Theory print. And I'm going to get that to you as soon as possible. So also, if you are a patron, you can pick whatever artwork you like that's associated with the show. I'll print it out and send it to you. So have a fantastic day. Sending squishy science hugs to all. Bye, guys. See you later.